Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, the HR Community Fellowship. And today we'll be having the second installment of our book reading. And the book we are going to be reviewing, we started reviewing it much earlier. If you missed the first edition, you can go to the YouTube channel and watch it. And the title of the book is Christian Scripture and Human Resource Management. Christian Scripture and Human Resource Management. And our book reviewer, our discussant, is our very own sister, Oluwaseun Ogunkoya, who is a human resource professional with over about a decade cumulative work experience spanning around business partnering, HR transformation, organizational development, payroll management, compensation and benefit, business development, relationship management, key account management, and even account event management. She has a background in sociology from Olabisi Onabanjo University, and she's an associate member of the Tara Institute of Personnel Management. She has a passion for helping small, medium enterprises build sustainable structure within their businesses and to aid profitability and business growth. Currently, she works with Page Asset Management as an HR executive. If I'm not mistaken, she was working at another organization the last time she facilitated this session. But one more thing, which is the most important reason why she's here. Thank God for her profile. Thank God for what she has gone through professionally. She's a child of God. And that is the singular most important reason why she's the one discussing with us tonight. Thank you so much, Sister Oluwaseun Ogunkoya. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, sir. This accolade explains. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you everyone for joining this evening. Really, I must really say thank you to Mr. Yemi for this opportunity, because it's really an opportunity for me. I run away from things like this, right? So just having been the one here to facilitate this session, I'm really glad for the opportunity, and I'm grateful to everyone who is on this call now. So I'll be sharing my screen because I had to work on a slide. What I just tried to do was put different points together for this session. I'm looking for the slide. Okay. Okay, so please confirm if you can see my screen now.
Yeah. Yes, but it is not full screen yet. Okay, yes, beautiful. Perfect.
So I had to quickly work on this slide. Well, not like quickly sharp, because it took a while, it wasn't rushed. The last time it was really rushed to work, but this time, God helped me. I put some time into it. So the book is quite a read, so I'll just quickly get into it. I hope that some of us have also read the book and we can just follow along. In addition to the slide, I'll be consulting my jottings so that at least I don't miss some important things, because what I just did in the slide was pick out like the messages that the book was trying to say for each of the different principles. So we are going into chapter 2 of Christian Scripture and Human Resource Management, and it's really been a very big one. It says building a path to servant leadership through faith. So it's really just connecting us to our faith, how the work that we do really connects to our faith, right? And going through this book, I'm just like, God, this thing we're doing is not work, it's a mission. Like we've been called to service. If pastors do their own to win souls, we also have our own part to play in the workplace. And that's really what this book, tells us, especially this chapter that we're going to. And chapter 2 says biblical Biblical Foundations for Servant Leadership Principles. And it focuses on these 5 principles: servanthood, stewardship, servant leader behavior, servant leader character, and servant leader foresight or reasoning. So if with these 5 things, like, they drew out different attributes under each of these, and we'll see, and they all have specific messages that they speak to, and they speak to certain attitudes that we also must imbibe and have. So we'll just go to servant leader attributes. I'm trying to minimize my screen. Yes. So servant leader attributes, I had to at least do some, find the dictionary meaning of servanthood, right? So servanthood means the role of being a servant. And what's a servant? A servant is a person who performs duties for others, especially a person employed in a house on domestic duties or a personal attendant. And just looking at this definition of who a servant is and what servanthood is, we know that we're actually called to serve. It's really just service, right? And that's really what leadership is. Leadership is really service, and that's what the book is talking about: servant leadership, leading through service. And the first attribute here, it says, as leaders, you must place the needs of followers first. And so we'll see different Bible passages for each of these attributes, right? This is just one of the many that, if you go back, you see several other, scriptures that each of these principles attributes to. But place the need of followers first. As leaders, we must always place the needs of our followers first. It's not first about us. It's first about the people who put us in that place. It's just the way, thank God it's election period now, right? And we know what we expect of our leaders, right? We know that a lot of people go there to better their own pockets and all, but that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be first about the people. And the example here is Abraham. We will see in Genesis 13 when Abraham was going to share the land, right? Before God even met him and said, as far as you could see, there was a land to share with his cousin, or I think Lot was his cousin or something. And Abraham didn't choose first. Abraham told Lot to make his choice, and whatever was left, he would take, right? And we know Lot chose the choicest of the lands, the best of the land. That was what Lot chose. But even though Lot chose the best, God still told Abraham, as far as his eyes could see, even in what was left, beyond that, he was going to give to him, right? And the lesson we have to pick here, it says, by deferring to a subordinate, this humble act reduces conflict, plus demonstrates confidence in the subordinate's judgment while demonstrating a steadfast faith in the future. It means that if we have those who report to us and we just let them make choices sometimes, it might not be every time, because there are times when you know that if I let them make this choice, they're going to make the wrong choice, right? We also have to guide them in love. But when we leave them to, make choices, it boosts some confidence in them, right? It just gives them that, okay, they begin to see themselves as a part of a thing, right? And it boosts their confidence. It makes them feel confident in themselves. It makes them feel like, yes, so if my boss will make me take this decision, then there's something about me, right? That's number one. The next one is obedience and willingness to engage in altruistic sacrifices. It's not a sacrifice if we're not paying you. We can't say we're making sacrifice when we have nothing to lose. And we see it with Abraham agreeing to sacrifice his son, his only son. We've heard this story from when we were children. Abraham was going to go and slaughter Isaac before God then say, oh, wait, there was a ram, right, somewhere. We also see it in Paul. Paul sacrificed everything for the gospel, wealth, affluence, everything. He sacrificed it all just to preach the gospel. And the lesson here is that our willingness to sacrifice our personal mission and identity demonstrates a powerful faith, which is inspiring to others. The fact that we are letting it all go, we know that ordinarily, even without letting go, there are people, even without letting things go, there are people who look up to us sometimes that we do not know. Imagine now being that person who sacrifices for others. We continue to inspire people intentionally and even unintentionally. And that's what that does for us. The next one is unity. And we see it says, Apostle Paul understood the importance of mission unity and focusing not on individual, but on collective achievements, emphasizing that we should not glory in self, but in being used, by God. It says servant leaders cultivate an ethos in which all employees possess a clear understanding that what unites all employees is the importance of the mission achievement, hence the emphasis on collective goals. How are we actually leading? Do people understand what we're trying to achieve? How are we communicating our goals? Because it's important, like if you have followers, as a leader, you must communicate your goals. It's why people would want to follow you. We know what HR mentorship is, for example, and we know why we're here. Everyone is here because there's something to learn. The goal is to help increase the knowledge of every HR individual. I'm sure even if there are people who are not HR individuals who are not HR professionals, rather who want to join HR mentorship, we won't say they should not join, because here what you're doing is learning in every way, and we know that it's even gone beyond learning. So like everyone is allowed to be themselves, but then there's that goal that is clear, and everybody does their bit to contribute to that goal, and that's the same way it should be as leaders. Next one says promote best interest. Know that all of this is under servanthood attributes. So these are just things under these are things under principles under the servanthood attributes that we should imbibe. The next one is promote best interest of others, irrespective of their level of support or understanding. We must promote the best interest of others, of the people we serve, of customers, of the people we lead. So an example is Jesus, right? He had an unswerving passion and commitment to implementing the plan of God. He resisted the pressure. We know that there were agendas everywhere. The Pharisees had their goal. They were ready to dissuade him, right? Even the disciples had their own goal. Sometimes, they would come with their own questions, and sometimes they were just like, who is this person really? But he didn't let any of that sway him. He was focused. So servant leaders understand that the loving exercise of power is not a pure democracy. They must uphold key principles of integrity and promote the long-term best interest of the subordinates, even when it is not recognized or desired. So even when our efforts are not recognized, we must continue to promote the best interest of others. Even when people are denying it, there are times when you're doing something like, so what have you done? Even so, we must continue. There's commitment to work-life balance, and we're not new as HR. We're not new to work-life balance, right? And when I read this quite, and I would really encourage that we go through. I wish I could read what the book actually said about, work-life balance. But if you really read this part, he said Jesus understood and modeled the practice of rest and harmony with various life seasons. As in, it spoke to how Jesus took naps. He took time away. Sometimes he went away to pray. Sometimes he just went away to rest, right? He said to just spend time alone in prayer, to remain spiritually connected to God the Father, and rested on a regular basis. He understood that humans must be connected to both the life-giving elements of spiritual and physical renewal. So rest is important for us. No matter how hard our work is, we must find time to rest. We must find time to, connect with people around us, with family, besides work. It mustn't just be all about the work. So servant leaders model the commitment to work-life balance by limiting work hours, setting boundaries on accessibility, utilize paid time off. Don't be the person that you don't use your leave. Please use your leave. Use it for you. Rest. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. That's what they taught us when we're growing up, right? So you must rest. You must refresh yourself during work day and take breaks. Like, take your lunch hour. Find time to eat. Find time to rest. Refresh your brain. I think it was last month, we had a health person in my office who came to speak to us about, something around work-life balance. And he said something like, our system is like is like our phone, right? At the end of the day, some cells are supposed to die for some new cells to take over. But if we don't rest, if we don't log off while we're on our system all through the night, so most of us sleep off on our system, so we don't really sleep. Even in our sleep, our mind is working. We don't let those cells that are supposed to die. So they work over time and they tell on us. So we must rest. As in, Christ was a very good example of that. He rested. So what is wrong with us? Why would we not rest? We have leaves. Please take your leaves. Please take your break. Take a walk if you must. Sometimes we just need to log off, and there's nothing wrong with that. We need to refresh. Rest is important. And it says we must also be servant followers. Paul admonishes all Christians to reflect that accountability is first and foremost vetted in God's authority. Hence, we should recognize that our true supervisor is always the Lord and work with excellence in all settings. Servant leaders promote servant followership or working with excellence, irrespective of the supervision level or quality. We need to serve unjust, skilled and unskilled managers with excellence. So when I was reading these parts, I was like, God, you are here, because you know how when we meet some bosses, we call them toxic bosses, right? We know when the toxic thing was going on social media. But they say as servant followers, we must be servant followers, even though we might be leaders, we still must be servant followers. So if we have those toxic bosses, we must not say, oh, I'm not going to serve this one. Our duty is to serve the ones that are toxic and the ones that are not toxic, the just ones and the unjust ones, the skilled ones and the unskilled ones. We must serve them equally, because in there is growth. And we know the things we say about all these things, right? Sometimes it might affect your mental, but you need to find a way to deal with these things. But then you cannot say, so because this person is not good to me, I'm going to do a crappy job. No. If you are excellent with a just boss, you must be excellent with an unjust boss. If we go further down, we say some, not here, further down into this chapter, it says something about God will vindicate you, your work will speak for you, but let's just go on, we'll get there. Under servanthood attributes, we still have sustainable work pace. It says Jacob traveled at the pace of the children and animals. Servant leaders understand the importance of reasonable work pace to avoid exhausting employees. I think there was an error there. But what this part is trying to say is that we must recognize that we have workers that are at different skill level. We have subordinates who are at different skill level. They are the ones that are really experienced and they are really good. They are the ones that are coming up, and we must learn to accommodate this everybody and create a balance. Where we have the ones that are not, working as much as we are not working up to the standard because they don't have the skills, not because they don't want to, right? But sometimes because they don't have the skill to. So we must help them through coaching, through mentoring, just ensuring that. So there's also that budding that we can do, budding them with somebody who is as good, so they can learn fast, whatever we can do to help them. We must be able to work at their pace. It says reduce. So under sustainable work, there's reduced status difference and demonstrate commitment to work. It says servant leaders authentically and enthusiastically perform the work of subordinates when necessary to reduce burdens and demonstrate empathy. Now, he gave us an example of Nehemiah, where he did the work. So he was committed to the effort of building the walls of Jerusalem, and then he did the work where some other people were supposed to. We're not saying do the work of your people, but sometimes, especially for business owners, sometimes, right? In a bit to encourage your workers, sometimes you might need to get into the work yourself so that they see that, see, this thing you are doing, we can all do it. I might be up there, but I can still do this. So it might be important that you also, you show that level of commitment, and they're like, hey, if I can do it, what am I waiting for? It says servant leaders cultivate teamwork and understand that all employees, from the most skilled to the unskilled, to the most visible to invisible are important to the success of the organization and mission. So we must never at any point make people feel like they are not worth anything or they're not contributing anything, because whether they are as good as the topmost people or they are not. And I know, yes, we do this performance thing where they say you have to let go of the your least 10% and promote the top 20%. But whether we're letting people go or not, I was reading about Netflix culture, which they, and he said something about how they gave performance reports such that when a person is no more, when your work is really no more contributing at the rate that it is expected, you already know, right? And so if they're going to let you go, you know that, oh, I'm not performing optimally anymore. If there's anything you can do to grow, obviously you will do. But at that point, you know, there's been that communication and not just making people feel like you're just not worth it. At least you're not going to say it in a way that is just off. It's going to still be in a loving manner, even if it has to come to that, right? And then there's social justice. Servant leaders possess a passion for relieving suffering, promoting a higher quality life, and reducing excess levels of inequality. As much as possible, we must reduce inequality within our organizations. And we know as HR people, we are like the intermediary, right? So we fight for our people where we need to, and we also fight for our business owners where we need to, and we must always be able to strike the balance. Under social justice, we still say servant leaders understand that employees are more engaged and committed when the mission of the organization and their specific job duties and goals promote altruistic causes. So what exactly is the mission of the business, right? Are we communicating this as much as we should? And is there alignment between people's job and the objectives of the business? We know that a lot of the mission of companies actually serve altruistic causes, and maybe if it doesn't, maybe we just haven't struck, you know, that beat that speaks to encourage, because everybody wants to feel like they're a part of something big. I know that they are contributing, they have a legacy to leave behind. People want to say, yes, I was part of the people who built this company or who did this. You want to look back in the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years and say, yes, I was part of the team that did this memorable thing, you know. The next one is stewardship attributes. And stewardship is an ethical, so this is the second principle of our biblical foundation for servant leadership. So stewardship is an ethical value that embodies the responsible planning and management of resources. So as servant leaders, we are also stewards, right? It says that it is the job of supervising or taking care of something such as an organization or property. The foundational principle of stewardship is that God is the owner of all, and we are simply passing on a portion of what he entrusts to us. And when I read this part, I was like, you cannot do your work and do it anyhow. We cannot afford to do our work and do it anyhow. And again, even as HR people, right, we're called to growth. There are people, so we have interns, and I think I was thinking about this over like the last week or so. You have interns who come into the organization, NYC core members who come into the organization, just entry-level people that come into the organization. And sometimes if you're in that organization where they start from, we're molding what their work life would eventually be. So we cannot even afford to be mediocre in our businesses, right? Because what that would mean is that we are passing that mediocre attitude onto these people, and they grow and they cannot be excellent in the things that they do. But why won't we be excellent if our Father really is excellent? What's stopping us from being excellent? And under stewardship attributes, we have God honoring accountability. Our accountability must give God honor. Your accountability must give God honor. Like, hey, God, So say servant leaders can make many serious mistakes, but if their heart is soft towards God and they are willing to, and they willingly repent, thereby learning from their trials and mistakes, and seeing their credibility and trust in the view of subordinates and other key stakeholders. And the reference here, 2 Psalm 11. So this particular part spoke to David, the David that we all know to be the man after God's heart. David made a lot of mistakes, but he had a soft heart towards God. So the reference here, the part where he slept with Bathsheba and they had to kill the husband. Was it Bathsheba and Uzziah? But that part was made reference to. There was also the part of his ignorance of protocol about moving the ark, right? That caused Uzzah's death. Uzzah was the one who tried to steady the ark. Who tried to steady the cart with his hand. And every time I read that portion of the Bible, I'm like, God, just because person just want old ark, make you not fall low, he still die. As in, did he do wrong? He didn't do wrong now. But hey, it was as a result of somebody's, mistake or error. And then there was the part of focusing on the strength of his army and not God's power by taking a census of his troop over the objection of his general Joab. But all of these, right, God was ready to put aside because of his heart towards God. So it says that even though we make mistakes, because our humanity would always show, right, but we come back to acknowledge our faults, and are we really ready to repent? Because we must always be ready to repent. Acknowledge your mistake and move on from it. Don't sit in it. Don't go over it again and again. Learn the lessons and move on. Right? Because this enhances our credibility and trust in the view of subordinates and other key stakeholders. We must learn from our mistakes. It says servant leaders assume responsibility for the organization's overall performance and events outside of their control that contributes to the problem. So those events that are outside of it, sometimes you might not be, you might not be excited about a decision that is being taken, but you must stand by it because it's a collective decision. You must defend it, even though your heart of hearts, I would love that this is not done. But then again, it's a collective decision. You have to stand by it. You have to defend it. You have to promote it. The servant leaders understand their own fallibility and the presence and effects of their own weaknesses and sins. In order for a just and fair outcome to be produced, they must establish their personal credibility and avoid even the appearance of hypocrisy. We cannot afford to be hypocrites. That's just a summary. We cannot afford to be hypocrites. We must understand that we are not perfect, right? We must admit our own weaknesses, but we must not be hypocrites. So we cannot say, oh, because again, as we go in life, there are things that we've done in the past that we see a younger person doing. And I'm just going to make, some people joke around is how a lot of our parents say they always take first. In their time, they were always first. For some, it's true. Maybe for all, it's true. But then we feel like, if everybody they take first, if all our parents really took first, please, who were the people that were not taking first in the class? But the point is, we have weaknesses. We have things we might have done, in the past that were errors for us. When we see others doing them, do we act like the holier than thou? Or do we try to correct them, making reference to our own errors and the lessons we learned from it? So we must not act as though we're all perfect, because we're not, right? And so we must not be, because in acting like we're holier than thou, it means that we are being hypocrites. It says servant leaders understand that they cannot properly diagnose the potential cause and solution if their internal lenses are flawed. Even the Bible says, remove the log in your eyes before you remove the speck of wood in your eye before you remove the log in another. That's knowing that I have a weakness in myself. I'm not perfect, But even in my imperfection, I'm trying, to grow from it. And as I grow, I will help others grow, acknowledging that I am not perfect as well, but we must all grow together. So here, there's also the absence of God-honoring accountability, right? We've talked about God-honoring accountability, but what happens when it's not there? And reference here was to, Adam and Eve, where they were tempted by the devil, by the serpent, right? And when God asked them, Eve tried to blame Adam. No, Eve blamed, the serpent blamed Eve, Eve blamed Adam. Nobody was taking responsibility for their action. So servant leaders recognize an absence of accountability in themselves and others. They lead by example and admit their mistakes and sins. We must take ownership, even for our errors, even for our mistakes. We must take ownership. We mustn't shift blames. We cannot afford to shift blame. We cannot be blame shifters. We must always, take ownership for our actions, even when they go wrong. So there's vision. And so it is important to possess faith and courage to begin leadership journeys with only a general sense of direction. And servant leaders provide a clear and compelling vision that justifies the cost and sacrifices in mission achievement without hope, motivation vanishes. So I'll just explain that together. The first one spoke to Noah, Abraham and Noah actually. Abraham, when God called him, right, he just told him, I will take you to a land that I will show you. It didn't say what the land was, but Abraham listened. Even when the direction was not clear, it was just a general sense, just go, I will show you. In this time and age, we try to logicalize everything, right? We want to rationalize it. We want to be sure. But sometimes, right, we need to move. We need to just know that the one that is leading us has the vision and he knows the way, right? Even Noah, when God told Noah to build the ark, before he gave him all of the dimensions, Noah was just first the person that was just even ready. So we must always have that ready spirit. And that's what we must be, right? So sometimes we have bosses who don't even give us clear direction, but we must do it regardless, right? Yes, it's good to ask questions, but sometimes they're not even ready to answer our questions. So should we just abandon the job because they give me direction? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Should you join me? No, we must try. We must be ready to, even with that little information that we have, do the most that we can with it and then present it. It might just be what they want. And if it's not, then we get corrections, And the second one here is discipline. It says servant leaders understand the critical importance of correcting and disciplining in love, both as a recipient and as a transmitter. When leaders resist correction, it reflects a combination of pride and the fear and the erroneous assumption that truth equates losing respect, power, and control. This characteristic encourages employees to resist transparency, corrections, and ultimately authority. What this tells us is we must be open to correction and we must be ready to correct in love, right? And we must not be rebellious. Because when we resist authority, people are watching. Again, I said that earlier, right? Under servanthood attributes. People are watching us. So when we resist correction, what happens is we're showing to other employees around us that they can also resist correction. They can afford to not be transparent. They can, resist authority and nothing will be done. But that's not the kind of leaders we want to be. So whether we are followers or leaders, we must still, because even as followers, we are still leaders. Leadership is not just about being in a position where we have people reporting to us. No, there's a leadership characteristic trait that we must all possess in how we do our work. Under stewardship attributes, we have wisdom in decision making. It says wise decision makers in the Bible seek out counsel from trusted advisors. Servant leaders understand the importance of diverse perspectives in the decision-making process, recognizing their potential limits and the presence of cognitive biases in themselves and others. So this just speaks to seeking counsel. We don't know it all. So we must ask for people's thoughts, advice from senior leaders, from juniors, from subordinates, because no man is an island, right? Nobody knows it all. We can say, oh, we have people who have gone before us, who have walked through our path. We want to learn from them. But how about those coming after us who know the trend? They understand the trends of time better. There's also something to learn from them. So we must be ready to bring everybody's ideas and perspectives together to make it a whole and make decisions from that. And that's where wisdom comes from. So there's respect for authority. This Apostle Paul clearly indicates that civil and governmental authority is derived from God's power and must be respected and honored with heartfelt obedience. Servant leaders should demonstrate reverence and respect for the authority figures in their professional and personal domains. They should also confer and demonstrate respect towards subordinates and their contributions. So we cannot say, oh, because this person is my leader, I must respect him, and then you disrespect your subordinates. No, everybody needs to be respected. I was telling somebody recently, and I think the person was asking about someone else. I was like, oh, is this person married? Is this lady married? I want to know, so I know how to talk. I'm like, respect everybody, whether the person is married or not. What's that information going to? If you're respecting everybody equally, it shouldn't matter whether this person is married or whether this person is older or whether this person is younger. Respect everybody. Everybody has a contribution and they must be recognized. So it's not, oh, because this person is higher, he will speak to my promotion or something, so he wants to be doing eye service with them. No, everybody requires our respect. Everybody has a contribution. So don't discard your subordinates because they're your junior or your co-workers because you feel like, oh, they don't matter. It's only the voice or the words of the leaders or your seniors at work that matters. No, everybody is important, especially in an organization where if you're in an organization where you're doing, 360 performance appraisal, where your co-workers, your subordinates can even appraise you. And sometimes you might not even know if it's, I personally feel like it should even be random, where you don't even know who is appraising you, If you are somebody who is not even respectful, then Kasala don't bust. But really, we should respect authority, whether subordinates or those above us. So it says there's a balance between servanthood and stewardship, and this speaks to obedience and mission achievement, setting clear priorities and practicing altruism. This as it brings the balance, like we explained, right? Servanthood is 7, servanthood is 7, being doing something for others, while stewardship is managing resources for others, right? But there's a balance between both. Obedience and mission achievement says that servant leaders understand that, like biblical admonition of balance of faith and work, we must balance stewardship, mission achievement, and servanthood. Even though we are trying to achieve a cause, we must also understand that we cannot do this, we cannot achieve this cause, without others. We're there to serve even as leaders. So there must be that balance. You must set clear priorities with limited resources and time. Whether we have a lot of resources or not, we must always set clear priorities. Everybody must understand where we're all going to, and that's why, there's this thing, I think it was when they say when the first people were going to go to space, there was a cleaner that was asked why he was doing what he was doing, and he says they were trying to put the first man on space, and it was just a cleaner. Because priorities were clear, everybody understood what they had to do. So everybody's job is meaningful, even the cleaner in your office, because again, if the cleaner does not clean and your space is dirty, you're probably not able to work or concentrate. So priorities must be clear. Everybody must know, what they're doing. And just even in the session that just ended, when we're talking about knowledge management system, right? The part I heard where he was saying that sometimes even our vendors don't know what the business is up to, what we do with the products with the services that they give us. Everybody must understand where the business is going to, what they are doing part-time, what's the goal of whatever we are doing. We must set that priority. What's most important? What should we be achieving at this point, or should we not be achieving? And it says we must practice altruism. Servant leaders esteem others greater than themselves and sacrifice their personal interests for the collective good. We must be ready to sacrifice. Yes, we must set clear boundaries, but then again, we must be ready to let go sometimes of things. The next principle is servant leader behavior attributes. And so definition of behavior, again, like I said earlier, I had to, look for the meaning of these major principles, umbrella principles, really. We've talked about servanthood, we've talked about stewardship. Now we're coming to servant leader behavior attributes. And it says behavior is the range of actions and mannerisms made by individuals, organisms, systems, or artificial entities in some environments. It is the way in which one acts or conducts oneself, especially towards others. So behavior really has to do with how we relate with others. How do people perceive us? It's in how we conduct ourselves around people. That's how they perceive us. Sometimes, yes, it's also a function of where their minds are, their own personal experiences, but then behavior really speaks to how we conduct ourselves towards others. And under behavior attributes, we have empower others and make self dispensable. You must be dispensable. We always say that no one is indispensable, Abi. No one is indispensable. It says servant leaders define success in the degree of growth and success those under them experience, with the goal of increasing the sum total of capacity and performance from both a character and competency level for each succeeding generation. And under this is succession planning and discipleship. I don't even think I need to do any explanation of this. HR mentorship is the example that we need for this. But in our respective workplaces, are we the type of people who hoard information? You hoard your skill. The truth is, you know how they say, if your hand is fisted, nothing goes in and nothing comes out. Mean that if you hoard the skill, you cannot grow, because even when they are looking for, oh, we need to promote, it's time to promote, nobody is going to be able to take your job, your position, so you can't even move. So the skill hoarding is really at your personal detriment, or at our personal detriment. But we must always share knowledge. And here, this portion made an example to Elisha, and Elijah and Elisha's relationship. Elisha was ready, as he was so ready that he asked for double portion of Elijah's mantle. I remember sometime last year when myself and some friends were talking about, we're reviewing, that relationship and all of Elijah's journey, those 4 places that, he got to before he was taken away, and all those things that happened there. And Elisha asked for a double portion of that. That's work. Remember that at some point, Elijah felt like was it Elijah that felt like he was the only one, that God could use and all of that. But Elisha was so ready. Even, I think he sold some of his oxen and stuff. Yeah, so it says Elijah demonstrated his commitment and motivation to learn under Elijah by killing his oxen and burning his equipment. He was willing to let go just to learn. Just to learn. Servant leaders understand the importance I'm trying to read from. Yes, servant leaders understand the importance of setting priorities and limiting their options by making decisions at the appropriate time and fashion that demonstrates unswerving commitment to the mission. If they are looking for people who are committed to the goal of the organization, are you going to be counted? If your boss is saying, who is that person that I can really trust, to hand over to? Would we be counted? This is me inclusive, not just for everybody listening to me, because even this also speaks to me too. So we must be ready to share, to let go of our, not just, let people learn from us. And we see that here, right? Everybody here comes to give us free sessions every day, every weekend, every other day, as often as there's space. And we know, Mr. Emi, when even one small space like this, there's already a training. And that's really giving. Everybody is giving. So this is just an example of, discipleship. Because here we're learning to be better. Even me, I would normally run away from things like this, but I am here learning. I'm working on slides. I'm in front of all of you. I can't see you, but you're here. I really don't like to, talk to people I can't see them, but I'm here. I'm doing this, and I hope that I'm doing it well. So we must be ready to help others, teach others, share of ourselves, and be ready to stay committed. So shared leadership model. In the book of Acts, as described in Galatians, the disciples developed a shared team-based leadership approach. 7 leaders share power and embrace a team perspective. We know what a team perspective is. It means that everybody is important. Nobody can be slacking. When one person is falling, we are there to assist and help them up. Everybody recognizes that they are important, and they are an important part of what's going to be achieved. And they are reminded every day. And that's important that we see ourselves as team players. Nobody working in isolation, everybody collaborating for the good of all. The next one is exercise upward influence. Servant leaders are good shepherds and aggressively petition higher authority to protect the well-being of subordinates. Moses was the example here. They perform with excellence, and so they possess the credibility and influence with their superior to secure key resources to protect and prosper their subordinates. Key word there for me was they perform with excellence. Like I said, Moses was the example here. Every time he would go to God on behalf of the Egyptians, he goes to God on behalf of the Egyptians, because he was also doing the things that he had to do. He was doing it to the best of his ability. He was doing
Israelites.
Sir?
Israelites, you meant to say.
Oh, sorry, Israelites. Sorry. Yes, Israelites, not Egyptians. Oh my bad. Israelites. It was also petition. It was standing in the gap between them and God. And we're HR people. That's really what we do. We're going to our leaders, for our employees, for our staff. But for us to even be able to go to the leaders, are we found wanting in our own work? And that's where excellence comes in. If you are the type that they ask for this is not done, they ask for this is not done, they ask for this is not done, we will not even have the, we can't even go forward to put our petitions. How we want it to come? How do we say it? We are not going to have that confidence. But when we are doing our job excellent, or we do a job that is error-filled, we won't have, and there's just always complaints, we won't have the confidence to go and put any petition forward or recommend anything. But we have to first be excellent and then exercise upward influence. We just have to. We know that that's the work that's no more work for me. That's the mission that I've been called to as HR professionals. There's also honest and balanced performance feedback. And this is really very key. Servant leaders understand the importance of accuracy and fairness in their interaction with employees, customers, clients, and other key stakeholders. An example here is that in performing performance feedback, we steal from our employees when we fail to provide adequate recognition and rewards for good performance, or when we fail to provide corrective feedback to facilitate accountability, growth, and learning. We all know that the essence of performance management really is to ensure that people are performing optimally. We're able to also give feedback that helps them grow. And that's why that's also how sometimes we're able to say, okay, this is the training this person needs, this is the intervention that is required. But when we are not giving the right feedback, we're stealing from them. We're stealing from our employees. When we're not providing the adequate recognition, someone has done something. Sometimes it's just, oh yes, let's even clap for Tonyo. She successfully did this. It's hard for some of us as leaders, and that's not right. We must be able to, I wanted to say lavish praise, but maybe not lavish praise, but at least recognize people as subordinates for the work that they do, because it also helps them do more. And when we don't do that, we are actually stealing from them. Since providing public recognition, servant leaders praise in public, understanding the importance of communal recognition for a job well done. I think that's what I was just speaking to. Public recognition is a powerful motivator and source of encouragement in challenging times. I don't think I even need to explain that again. It's like very self-explanatory. When we provide recognition, I think, let this well sometimes. We might not see it, but then, there's just that, oh Lord, I did this. It encourages people to want to do more. And when things are not working out, they just, you can always, there's a way that our system works, that when things are not working, we just remember those good times and then it just keeps you going. So those things happen for everybody, I believe. And recognizing people really helps a lot. Then there's conflict resolution also as a servant leader behavior attribute. So servant leaders confront others in love, not with the goal of humiliating or dominating, but challenging in love based upon moral and spiritual principles that promote the well-being of others and uphold moral and spiritual principles. So we must always confront in love. We must not be afraid, to have those hard conversations. But even when we do them, we must not do them making the other person feel, it must not end in the other person feeling bad about themselves. But it must end in them feeling, the Bible, the Bible, and then as Nigerians, they say the person the parent love or the father loves the most is reprimands, right? We must make them feel like, yes, it's because I want you to be better. That's why I'm giving you this correction. Not after they've been called to, the boss's office, they come back feeling like, oh, they were just hot. They were bashed and battered. It might be bashing and battering, but it should not be in the negative lens. It must be correction and confrontation that makes them better, shows them where their fault is, where they have erred. We said it before that as servant leaders, we must be ready to give and receive reprimands and discipline. We must be ready to receive it. Sometimes we should even ask for these feedbacks from our superiors. How have I done? How am I doing? What should I be doing? It's not because we need people's feedback, to feel validated. No, but then we know that it's important for our growth. We're not waiting for it like, oh, if it doesn't come, then I'm stuck. No, it's not, it shouldn't be like that. But we must seek feedback every time. You need to know where you are doing right, where you are doing wrong, what you should be improving on, what you should stop doing. The last session we had, where we're talking about our 100 days as an HR professional. In all of those strategies, there was the part that talked about stop, start, what you should stop doing, what you should continue doing. They were all strategies for growth. So we must seek feedback. We must be ready to have these hard conversations, and we must do it in love. The next one here is servant leader character attribute. And I think that this is the one that has a lot of children. It's backing a lot of babies. It's really a lot. But we're here. And I hope that we're all following. Please, if you have any questions, I am ready, you can ask. I don't know, maybe I should just pause here for contributions or questions before we continue. So it's not like I'm just rapping all along. Amy? Can we pause here for contributions, or should I continue?
I think you're doing a very good job. I think you should continue. I mean, for me, this is like school, and you're doing a very good job as a teacher. So for those of us who have not read the book, well done. You're serving us well, hot.
Thank you very much. Okay, so just continue. So the next one says servant leader character attributes. Character is the aggregate of features and traits that form the individual nature of some person or thing. The mental and moral qualities distinctive to an individual. I'll take that again. This character is the aggregate of features and traits. Remember that when we talked about behaviors, we said it had to do with how we act or conduct ourselves towards others, right? Because when I was really looking at the definition, I was like, what's even the difference between character and behavior? It's not the same. But again, so this says aggregate, like it brings together all the features and traits that forms us as individuals. This is not in how we behave or conduct ourselves to others. This is what makes us distinct and unique as individuals, the mental and moral qualities that makes us unique as individuals. And under this, we have humility as number one. And it says leaders must embrace humility to receive corrective feedback and grant power to subordinates. We must be humble as followers, as leaders, remembering that whether we are leaders, as leaders, we are still servants. As followers, we are still servants, and we must have character. We must have leadership character traits. So we must embrace humility to receive corrective feedback and grant power to subordinates. So again, it speaks to what I said about giving correction, in love. Because that way we give power to those under us, those who report to us. And the reference here is Exodus 18, 13 to 27. Oh, God. So it says there's a higher degree. Please, I'm going to have to pause a bit because my phone is calling me. There's an alarm I need to turn off. Sorry, people, 1 minute, please. I'm back. Sorry for the break.
That was less than a minute.
All right, thank you very much. So it says there's a higher degree of accountability for those in leadership position, requiring a humble heart to receive and accept discipline. And I think this part spoke about Moses, about how he had so much, he had so much that he was responsible for. Okay, yeah, so it says Moses was instructed by God to demonstrate a higher level of God's power by speaking to the rock to bring forth water. But because of his anger with the complaining of the Israelites, he struck the rock. So he struck the rock more than he was supposed to. Because we know that Moses had anger issues. And we know that in servanthood, David already talked about that even though, okay, we spoke about David, that even though David was always had his flaws, he had a soft heart. Moses also had anger issues. And it says that as leaders, right, leaders have a higher degree of accountability. So if you say that you have to be accountable as a follower, leaders have more pressure on them. God gave Moses an instruction, but because the people he was supposed to provide water for were complaining, he didn't listen. He didn't do as God instructed him to do. But then again, he had to come back to God with a humble heart. You have to come back with a humble heart. So it says there's a higher degree of accountability for those in leadership position, requiring a humble heart to receive and accept discipline. It means that even our leaders, even our bosses have people that they report to. They are also subject to discipline, and they have to be humble, even much more than we that were just starters. Next one says, servant leaders actively embrace and promote the growth and success of others and voluntarily relinquish power to promote the common good. Here, he talked about John the Baptist. We know how in John the Baptist's time, he was also assumed to be the Messiah, but after Christ came, he had to mellow down for Christ to be seen. And that's why we say he's the forerunner of Christ, right? But then his ministry also had its own wave. But after Christ came, he had to, reduce so that Christ will be seen. And sometimes that's what is required of us. We have to calm down, we have to mellow down, just to promote the common good. Servant leaders recognize the collective nature of authority embedded within the organization and team. Here it also says Jesus was being baptized by John. John was older than Jesus. Before Jesus came, John already had the ministry, but John understood his mission. He understood what his assignment was. And he did struggle with it. So there are times when, we might be at some point, we might be the reigning person in an organization, or we might be the most preferred, or we might be the ones, that are most recognized, but sometimes you just have to calm down. It can't always be us. It can't always be you. Yoruba people say, sorry, I wanted to say something, but it has jumped out of my head, so I'm not saying it anymore. Next one says, servant leaders do not exert ego ownership over the mission and rejoice when progress is made, irrespective of the source and the cost to their personal reputation. So it doesn't matter what, you must not let our ego, get in the way of achieving the common good. Sometimes we have to go over and beyond for goals to be achieved. We must not feel like, oh, because I was the one that did the most. So no, our ego must never come first. So the next one here is pride. It says servant leaders relentlessly examine themselves for the presence of pride. Pride appears in its most damaging form in times of success, in which it is tempting to take credit for the successes born of God's power and that of the team talents and contributions that support the leader. So we must always examine ourselves. We must be very self-aware as servant leaders. Very self-aware, we must know when pride is coming in. And here it says that it comes when it seems like we're achieving, when we are successful. There's that likelihood that we want to take glory for team effort. We've heard some people have complained about how they will do something and then some bosses just, and some bosses just will not acknowledge their work. Like, I'm sure sometimes we've heard how some people say, oh, they were the one that did that, but the boss will go and say, oh, they were the ones. It was the boss that did it. Instead of acknowledging the subordinate effort, you're saying, oh, it was team effort. We must always acknowledge teamwork. We must not take glory for teamwork. Whatever it is, individuals will let it. And that's why, sometimes we interview people using this STAR method of interview. We say what the task is, what was the situation, what was the task, what was the achievement, what was the result. So even where it is team effort, you must be able to say, oh, this is what I did. Not, I was not responsible for everything that happened. No, what did you do? And even as a a leader, you must always be able to say, oh, myself and my team achieved this, where yes, it was yourself and your team. But we must not, in times of success, be tempted to take credit for, team effort. So another key element is the recognition of our moral limits in using power and influence. We say power intoxicates, right? But we must be very mindful to not be the ones who are intoxicated by this power. We must know the limits. We must know the moral limits in using our power and influence. Then integrity is the next one. So servant leaders should expect attacks against their integrity because of their excellence and good examples. As servant leaders do not recant the truth for expediency's sake and trust God for protection. And this portion was spoke to Daniel. When that decree was given that everybody should bow. No, so it was because they saw that Daniel had a God. He worshiped God. Every time he worshiped God. And then the chiefs went to meet the king at the time to say, oh, he should make a decree that the king must be the only one who was going to be worshipped. They did it just because of Daniel. But Daniel stood. He said, we should expect attacks against our integrity as servant leaders because of our excellence and good example. But first, we must be excellent. It's not that we'll be mediocre and say that we're expecting attacks. We must first have that excellent spirit. Again, it's one of the prayers I pray. Now, God, I want to do excellent work. Because our Father is excellent, so why won't we do excellent work? But even in our excellence, we must know that we'll have attacks. We must expect it and we must trust God, to get us out of it. And we must not recant the truth for expediency's sake. We must not hold back on the truth. We must trust God for protection. We must not say, oh, if I don't tell the truth. And I think this portion spoke to the Hebrew boys. Is it? We must, or Daniel still, because even when Daniel was questioned and then he was thrown into he could have maybe told a lie just so that he would be freed. But he stood for what he stood for. So we must know what we stand for and stand by it and trust that God will save us and God will protect us. We said that Daniel was, saved. Even though he was thrown into the lion's den, the lion did not eat him. Okay. So yes, the next one is testing our motives. The examination of our motives is an essential element of leadership and personal growth. Without the deep introspection of our motives, we gradually lose our ability to discern the ethical, moral, and spiritual nuances of our actions that contribute to rationalizing and justifying self-serving sinful behavior. We must always test our motive. Why am I doing this? This portion even spoke to how you could have noble actions, but your motives might be wrong. Like, it's possible that what you're about to do is actually not bad, but then the reason why you want to do it is not just godly. And you must desist from that. You must be able to ask yourself, these deep questions: why exactly do I want to do this? Why exactly am I about to say these things? Why exactly am I about to, take an action? You must always ask, because if not, we can just slip into sin. We can just slip into sin and not even know. The next says respect for 360-degree authority. Servant leaders serve just and unjust masters with excellence, resisting the impulse to take revenge or vindicate themselves. I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about stewardship, I think. We must serve just and unjust masters. There's no, this my boss is wicked, so I'm going to do anyhow. No, we must still do our work excellently. In short, it's even in that time that we must go over and beyond to be over excellent if there's anything like that. And we must always resist the impulse to revenge or vindicate ourselves. And Joseph was an example here. There was never a time he thought to take, revenge on Potiphar's wife, or the cupbearer that said, oh, I will remember you when I leave this prison, or his brothers. He was still himself. He forgot it and pushed everything aside. So the next here is also said servant leaders recognize that their success is the product of a team effort, and therefore do not take advantage of subordinate desire to please those in authority. And I think I've already talked about this. Must always recognize team efforts. What were the contribution of our subordinates? Give recognition, recognize their efforts. We mustn't take glory for work that was not solely ours. So servant leaders do not respond to public insult or slander, trusting God to protect and vindicate. At times when we experience some difficult co-workers or difficult people. So for those of us that take bus, sometimes difficult conductors on the road that just want to frustrate your life. For those who drive, we know how some people just drive crazily on the road. We must hold back. We must not be quick to respond to these things. Like sometimes even not responding a lot of times helps us. Responding sometimes just messes up our day. And you're just, turned upside down. You're like, oh God, what is this? But we must be able to, just let go, overlook these things and not hold on to them. Next one says emotional regulation of speech. And it's just very similar to this part about not responding to insult or slander. We must regulate our speech. We just cannot afford to be talking anyhow. Because one of our mission is to reduce stress. This is a central element of success for the servant leader is to replace and not repress dysfunctional and stress-inducing thoughts with God-honoring thoughts that reduce dysfunctional thinking and the associated negative emotions that adversely influence decision-making and physical health. Okay. So I'm going to go back to this part that says, this part? Sorry. Testing our motives, right? And now it's saying we must emotionally regulate our speech. Because what we want to do is replace those dysfunctional stress-inducing thoughts, not repress them. We want to replace them with God-honoring thoughts. So we must be intentional about the things we say, the thoughts in our mind. Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, right, the mouth speaks. So what are those thoughts? When they are negative, we must try to replace them. One of the things I personally do is try to, listen to songs that are lively, Christian songs sometimes, but even if it's not Christian songs that are not vulgar, but then they uplift my spirit. That way, I'm able to bounce off, God helping me, I'm able to bounce off negativity. So we must be very intentional about regulating our speech. We don't want to carry negative emotions around. So when we're having those negative thoughts, we must be able to replace them with positive ones. He said, servant leaders carefully reflect before speaking, recognizing the power and influence of words on subordinates and other stakeholders. When we're talking about, and I don't know a lot about emotional intelligence, but Peter, I know is sometimes you need to take a pause before responding. Sometimes we just need to pause. We don't have to respond immediately. Because then we realize that some things are not even worth the response. Sometimes taking a pause just eases out a lot of stress and problem. Things that would have maybe ordinarily escalated, and you have people, coming to speak to you and be like, oh, calm down or settle an issue. And this is even beyond the workplace, even around us. Sometimes we just need to take a pause and just think about what we're going to say before we say it. These things are like very minute seconds pause that just helps us, go over the things that are just in our mind and just find out, oh no, I can't say this. The next one is workplace forgiveness. And when I was reading this part, I remember how they say, if you are married to someone, you have to forgive in advance. And for me, this was when I read, that was just what registered in my head, that even before, anybody offends me at work, I need to learn to forgive in advance, knowing that people will offend you in that ways, but how do I want to deal with it? They say servant leaders understand the power of forgiveness in healing wounds and promoting relationship restoration. When leaders who are in a position of power avoid retaliating, this sends a powerful message of forgiveness, enabling others to accept forgiveness and forgive themselves. We saw it a lot in the life of Christ. How so many times the Pharisees will come to ask him questions that they used to pin him, but they never succeeded. Christ forgave the disciples after Christ died, before he resurrected and came back. A lot of the disciples denied him. But hey, there was a mission. They were forgiven even before they even took the action either ways. And that's really what we must try to emulate. Then courage. So some leaders understand that courage is not the absence of fear, but persisting in its presence as such. They are not excessively prideful, nor refuse to ask for help or reassurance. Courage is not the absence of fear, but even without fear, we must go forth. We must go forth and dominate, like the Bible tells us to, Says, and because we're going for, because we have this courage, we know that yes, we're scared, but we're not going to be excessively prideful. We must also be ready to, ask for help or reassurance. The servant leaders use their natural gifts and abilities to defeat the Goliaths of fear that appear in organizational life. They reject trying to use tools and strategies that are not within their skills and ability level. For me, this really just spoke to self-awareness, because it says, so he speaks about, the example here was David, right? When he killed Goliath, he didn't use a sword. He didn't use an armor. He used the stone and a sling that he was used to. That was his natural place. He knew how to swing it. Any which way you're coming, he knows how to, swing the shot. So what are those skills that are your natural skills? You know how they say you must recognize your strength and enhance them while you are trying to maybe work on your weakness, but you must learn to enhance your strength. So what are those things, those tools, those strategies, those skills that they're natural to you? You must know them. So you must know yourself. We must know ourselves, not you, we. Because again, it's also speaking to me. We must know ourselves, know those things that are our weapon. David understood that his own was a sling, and it didn't matter how big Goliath was, he took him down. So we must also recognize what those skills are for us, what are our strengths, and seek to enhance them. Not focus on trying to, be better at our weaknesses. No, enhance your strength first. Put it forward, put it forth. So if it means that we, after today, have to go and take a personality test, speak to coach, just to really understand ourselves. Be more observant, be more introspective about yourself. Because again, those things that come natural to us are the things that we want to put forth first as we go. So servant leaders trust God for protection in the face of threats and obstacles, recognizing that God is responsible for the outcome. They also take concrete actions to reduce the threats to their subordinates. And you know how there's a I think a parable in the Bible about how whether someone planted and I can't remember, it's that how the plant grows really is God. You will water, yes, you will plant, but it will still grow.
So Paul planted, Apollos watered, and God gave the increase, right?
Well, yeah, that speaks to it, but that's not the one I was trying to release. But yes, but that speaks to it.
Okay.
That speaks to it. How it grows is really, it's really God. So we must understand that we must trust God for protection, even in the face of threats and obstacles. Knowing that, see, God is responsible for the outcome. Whatever the outcome will be, yes, we can plan. And that's why even in our plan, we must put God in our plans, you know. So several leaders understand the importance of symbolic and concrete actions to reduce anxiety and fear among subordinates. And here, Nehemiah 4, it was about when they had to go and see the land. I think it was after the Israelites had come out of the after they come out of the desert, after they come out of the desert of the wilderness, and they had to go and check the land. It's the land of Canaan now. But they went, and then of the people that came back, only 2 people said the land was good. The others said they were giants and they couldn't, overcome it. But again, saying that they were giants is just going to bring fear and anxiety to people. You must always see the opportunity in every situation and focus on it. It's not saying don't acknowledge the impossibilities, know them. And that's why, we do SWOT analysis, strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats, right? We identify our weaknesses, we identify the threats in the business environment, but still we must focus on our strengths and use those strengths, to take the opportunities in our favor. But we must know what our weaknesses are. We must know what our threats are, what the threats are. But we can't put the weaknesses first. We must see the opportunity in every situation. So 7 leaders honor the ontological principles of honoring God's commandments, irrespective of the cost. They would rather fail and suffer the consequences than gain a short-term success at the expense of integrity and sinning against God. We know the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They went into the fire regardless, and God was with them. They didn't say, oh, it's fire, we're going to die. What they said was, even if God didn't come to save them. So what are those things we stand for in the organization, that people are not on our side, we're the only ones standing for it, and we know that this is the right thing? Are we going to stand for it regardless of what it will cost us? Or we'll say, if I say this now, everybody's going to look at me as spirit cocoa, or they're just going to put me aside. We can't really afford to do. There's certain things that we know we must stand for because they are the right things. Hope is the next one. So the major element of servant leadership is to give employees hope in trying circumstances. Without hope, employee stress level increases and performance decreases. So we must always give hope. And that's why we do, as much as possible, we try to ensure that our employees are engaged, right? We must always give hope, even when things don't seem like, they're going well for others. We should encourage them, give them that hope to forge forward, and just improve. Then there's fear. So servant leaders resist the temptation to adopt unethical or immoral means when circumstances appear dire. They are patient and place the fear of man in perspective. So we must resist the temptation to adopt means that are immoral. And we must be patient. I'm trying to remember the portion of scripture, and I think this was David. I think this was David. Oh my God, okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to consult. Yes. Sorry. Okay, so it was Saul rather. Saul, out of fear, Samuel told him to wait, right? But it says Saul demonstrated a greater concern for the reaction of his subjects and soldiers than obeying God. For example, when he was instructed by the prophet Samuel to wait for 7 days before the sacrifice, Saul grew fearful when the 7th day arrived and Samuel was absent, and his men began to scatter. So instead of waiting, he went on to perform the sacrifice by himself, which was really not acceptable. He was scared of what people would say. So are we also those who be like, what will people say? It's not a what will people say, it is what will God say? What are we standing for? Again, like I said in the beginning, this is our work, it's not work, it's a mission. It's a mission. So we must not look at how people would react, but what should we be doing? What's the right thing to do? The servant leaders fear God first, thereby resisting temptation to compromise, to placate subordinates. So it's still the same thing, just fearing men and fearing the reaction of others rather than what God will say. It should be about God. Are we doing the right thing? Are we doing what we should be doing? Not swaying to, the popular opinion because we don't want to be the one man standing, or because we're scared of the negative reactions of people. It shouldn't be like that. Since the process of comparison is fraught with danger for servant leaders, it leads to pride, fear, and complacency, undermining the ability to empower others and solve organizational problems. So when we're comparing ourselves, what we are thinking of what people say, we rid ourselves, of that opportunity to solve actual problems, because we then follow the popular opinion instead of, sometimes it happens that you see an issue, but maybe because people are not talking about it, you don't talk about it. But sometimes you might just need to be that first person who says it. Maybe other people are not seeing it, but once you see it, say it. Because if you don't say it, if we're scared of what people will say, it will just. So maybe we are just the one who's supposed to see that problem and think about solutions to solve it. Because we don't want to stand alone. We don't want to be the one who has a different opinion from others. We follow popular opinion. We can't let fear take over us because it rids us of, being the problem solvers that we should really be. Then there's persistence. Servant leaders persevere and grow through obstacles and resistance, irrespective of the length of time. Servant leaders remain. So sometimes it takes, time. So servant leaders understand that perusing a righteous course of action may increase resistance and produce short-term failure. However, they trust God for protection and the ultimate outcome. So sometimes we have like a career plan, right? But it just doesn't seem like where we are. And one thing I think I've learned over time is everywhere we are, every step we are, every organization we find ourselves actually contributes to our growth. And I'll say this, there are a lot of maybe younger people who work with, senior leaders, working with them personally on projects and all. And you hear some people say, oh, this person used me. There's really nothing like this person used me, because if we really look at it, right, you're given an opportunity to do work, to better yourself, to do something that you're probably not even used to. And in some cases, this senior leader is probably entrusting you with work that somebody has paid them for. That because you are not they know that you're not good at it, but they also want you to learn on it. You can scatter it and destroy their reputation. But then you come and say, oh, this person used me, this person used me. Look on the bright side, it's an opportunity to actually grow. In every seeming bad situation, there's something to learn and there's an opportunity to grow. And we must always find it. We must persevere in the face of adversity, because inherent in that adversity is growth. As we go through it, we learn. As we go through it, we learn. And complaining would only rid us of seeing that opportunity, seeing the lessons that we must learn in those things, right? So we must persevere. We must know that irrespective of how long it takes, there's a mission. Our career goal will be achieved as far as we are on the right path. Even when it doesn't seem like the right path, let's ask ourselves, what am I supposed to learn in this situation? Next one is response to failure. How do we respond to failure? It says servant leaders understand that failure and character flaws are ever-present elements of human nature, and they take a long-term developmental approach. Learning and growth entail responding to life's full range of experiences, positive to negative, failure to success. So failure, what we see as failure is really not failure. It's really an opportunity to grow. Failure is part of life. It will always be there. Character flaws and people are part of life. We must always learn to respond to it positively, because they are part of human nature. We will always deal with it. So people will not always be perfect. People will fall below our expectations. But we must respond positively. We must be ready to help others grow. We must be ready to grow in ourselves, knowing that even we ourselves are not perfect. So we must be ready to help others grow. We must also be ready to grow ourselves, learn as we grow, even in those, those seeming failures. We must see failures as a stepping stone for growth. And there's contentment. So several leaders communicate that they are pleased with employees, but not satisfied, recognizing the value of present contribution while exhibiting confidence in the employee's capacity for future growth and development. We talked earlier about being able to, give praise. And I think this just also speaks to that. Knowing that people might not be where we want them to be, especially the body beats, right? They might not have that skill. Maybe we need them to do Excel PowerPoint presentation that are just really, on point. They just give you keywords. They're really nice, colorful, they are attractive, but then you see them doing very, very wordy PowerPoint slides and all of those. You know that, see, there's a place of growth. And it's really even at different levels of work, there's a place of growth. We must understand that, yes, and it says here that we are pleased with employees, but not satisfied. We must be able to express our dissatisfaction, but recognizing that, yes, this person gave their best to it. It's not when somebody is being mediocre. Please, when people are being mediocre, let's tell them that they are being mediocre. Like when we know that you have the capacity to do this, even right now, you can do much more than what you have given me. But where we have people who are going over and beyond, but we know that they are just not at the needed skill level, we must let them know. We are happy, we are pleased with what they brought, but we're not satisfied because they can do more. But we must help them see that, that gap, and help them grow to the required skill level. Next one is patience. So leaders must be willing to endure long periods of isolation and lead to perceived progress while continuing to inspire confidence and hope in the ultimate success of the mission. And I think this speaks a lot to, people who have businesses or startups, and even in organizations where you're trying new things. It may not work the first time, right? But we must learn to, endure those long periods. We must learn to endure those periods where things are not working. And also learn to, encourage others and inspire confidence and hope in others, and know that, see, this mission is going to be accomplished. We can try and try and try and fail, but we know that, yes, this goal is going to be accomplished. As far as we're not doing the same thing, we're picking, those errors, those mistakes in what we have done before, and we're trying a different way of doing that same thing. We can't be doing the same things every time and feel like it's going to change. No. If you do it once, there was something that didn't work. Can we study it, observe what did not work, and then do it again? And give people that, that confidence, that hope that, yes, there's something to be achieved and we will achieve it together. So several leaders are patient in their career progress and development. They are pleased to assist senior leaders and allow others receive the credit. I spoke to this earlier about, working with senior leaders, maybe a personal contract or even within the organization, right? We must know that we must be ready to assist our seniors. We must be ready to allow others receive credit for our work sometimes. But even in that, we learn. We must always learn and be patient as we go. So leaders who respond to short-term pressures, inexpedient and or inappropriate ways produce high long-term costs and dysfunction. I think the example here was Esau selling his birthright. There was also the example of Sarah and Hagar, where God had promised Sarah that she was going to have a child, but it wasn't forthcoming, and then she told Abraham to have to lay with Hagar, and then we see all the commotion that happened later. So we must not take the shortcuts. We know what the process is. Let's follow the process. It might be hard, it might be rigorous, but in building systems and structures, those rigorous parts, that's where we must follow, not just the shortcut, because we know that sometimes the shortcut, then what will we pay will be much more than the time we spent or we did spend following the rigorous path. Since Ministry of Interruptions, and this part spoke to me special, very, very special. So some leaders understand the importance of relationship cultivation in unplanned encounters. In essence, they are not accidents from a Christian worldview belief system, as all interactions possess a greater purpose. When leaders seek out unplanned interaction, it cultivates relationship trust, understanding, and commitment. Sometimes we have a plan for our week, a plan for our day. It's going well, or it's going well, then somebody just comes with their own issues. I need you to help me do this. And then you have to, leave what you're doing sometimes and focus on that. And you just find that it has disrupted your day. And you finish doing this and you're like, oh God, what kind of thing is that? How did I decide? Sometimes we're just rambling and ranting to ourselves. But system knows that sometimes those interruptions are actually needed. So maybe from today, we need to stop seeing them as interruptions and begin to say, there's actually something about it. And the example here was, there was a time when I think Christ was with the disciples, and then there was a woman who came with, so there was the woman with the issue of blood, right? Because again, he wasn't even in the healing mood, but we know every time there's healing, and she touched him. But there was one where he said, even dogs eat from the remnants of the leaders, of the house owners rather, right? When the woman came and said, you should please come and heal our daughter. Yeah, I think our daughter or son or something. And Christ had to leave it and go and leave what he was doing and go and attend to that. So we will have those interruptions and it could come in any form. It could be at work. It could be in terms of, a plan that we have made and it's going well, and just something comes and just deviates us. Sometimes those interruptions are needed. In it, we are building trust, we are building understanding, we're cultivating trust, because the person who has come here and you've left what you're doing, somehow they're looking at, oh, this person, I can trust this person, because you're able to leave what you're doing to attend to them. So we're building relationship as we do these things for people. And sometimes we don't even know, but then we are. Because there are people looking at us from left, right, and center. They're just those people who just know this person is a good team player. And then maybe the next time they're trying to, build up their team, they're just calling you, and you're like, but we don't even work together. But they see the things that you do for other people. So the response to persecution. Remember that when we're talking about when we're talking earlier, it says we must prepare for those attacks. So how do we respond to it? So several leaders are confident and faithful, trusting God for ultimate vindication, irrespective of the degree of persecution and the nature of the circumstances. I think this is just even self-explanatory. We've been told to expect attacks as we do our excellent work, but we must trust God, knowing that He will vindicate us no matter what. Just overlooking offenses, and I think this also speaks to workplace forgiveness. So several leaders understand that overlooking offenses reduces the intensity of conflict and promotes harmony. It's not every time somebody offends us that we must talk. It's not every time that somebody says something to us that we must respond. Sometimes we just let it go. This is when we overlook offenses, it removes a powerful weapon of manipulation and control that others have over us. So it means that sometimes some people will deliberately come and look for your trouble because they just want you to talk, because they just want you to be vexed. But when you overlook them, they come to try to manipulate you. But hey, you've overcome them. The day they're looking for you, do not meet you at home in Jesus' name. So the capacity to overlook offenses increases our effectiveness in cultivating trust with others and effectively interacting with difficult people. So sometimes we must just learn to be patient. Some people are just difficult, but we must learn to be patient, remembering that we are called to serve just and unjust leaders in excellence. Excellently serve just and unjust leaders. This is excellence of character and competency. Servant leaders build reservoirs of credibility that translate into favor and higher levels of influence at all levels. This increases trust and favor. So as we go, we build credibility in the things that we do and increases our level of influence. So servant leaders understand that God is the source of their promotion, and that demonstrated excellence increases visibility and promotion opportunities. I think we all understand that. As far as you are excellent in your work, say the reward for good work is more work. The reward for good work is more work. I know we say it a lot as something negative, but hey, it's not negative, it's positive because we're excellent. That's why we'll be called for more, because people see our capacity, they see our competence. Obviously, they will call us because they want people who are good at their job to do their work. So it's not just because they want to put a heavy workload on us. No, it's because we are good and it's being recognized, and it increases our visibility, and it gives us opportunity to be promoted, opportunity for expansion, opportunity for growth. So servant leader excellence often leads to promotion and terms of visibility and influence. That's also been said earlier. So servant leader character attributes, the last two, fair treatment. Servant leaders understand the damaging effects of the formation of in-groups and out-groups, including pride and complacency, produced in the favored and the envy. Anger and pain experienced by those with lower status. It reduces engagement and overall levels of productivity for the workforce as a whole. This just tells them we must treat everybody fairly. There must be no we they feeling amongst people. It says in group and out groups, we being in groups and they being out groups. You must not have, and I know that yes, almost think like in a gathering of so many humans, it's hard for you to not find that cluster of groups and caucuses. But the truth is this, for us to promote teamwork, we cannot afford to have those clusters of groups where people feel like, oh, these are my people. And anybody who is against these people, I cannot work with them. It's not going to promote anything. It will only reduce engagement and reduce productivity in the workforce. So as much as possible, we must treat everybody fairly. We must give fair treatment to everyone and fair compensation. So servant leaders commit to a fair wage system on all levels. This entails internal, external, and merit-based equity. And that's why every organization runs an equal opportunity system. So where we know that there's no equal opportunity, we must try as much as possible to promote equal opportunity and fair compensation. And the last attribute, the last principle we're going to be talking about is reasoning. In the first slide I gave, it was servant leader foresight. But it speaks to reasoning. It says reasoning is the capacity of consciously applying logic by drawing conclusions from new or existing information with the aim of seeking the truth. Reasoning is the action of thinking about something in a logical, sensible way. Says Noah accepted the assignment of building the ark with faith and obedience. Servant leaders manifest an ability to trust higher authority when logic and a clear rationale are not provided. So sometimes we have instructions where we're not clear, but we have like a general direction to just go forward. We saw when we started where God told Abraham, go to a land I will show you. He didn't know where the land was, but he had to go for. When Noah was given the instruction to build the ark, the instruction didn't come all at once, but he moved. We must have faith and obedience, whether in our relationship with God. You know, sometimes God just gives us instructions and we must follow. As we go, it becomes clear. Just like we say, you only get better when you do. As you do, as you take action, you get better. You cannot say, oh, I don't know how to do so, you just stop. No, try. As you go, you find answers. And so this speaks to godly reasoning, and it just gives us different ways of how we reason, how we should reason, of godly reasoning. It says, test all spirits, given the presence of many false prophets. We must test all spirits. Test self and examine personal motives in the face of rationalization and self-deception. So sometimes even we can deceive ourselves, but we must test our motives. And we said it before, when we're talking about testing motives. We must always ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Because sometimes we have noble actions, but the motives behind it are just wrong. There's also a further emphasis on testing all spirits for alternative explanations to specific events or rival hypotheses. So servant leaders understand that appearances are deceiving and conventional wisdom requires validation and tests. Hence, servant leaders are open to new explanations. We must not say that, oh, because we've done it this way before, so we must continue doing it that way. No, let's try new explanation. Let's try new ways. If there's a new idea, if there's a new way, what's the reason? What are we going to achieve from doing that thing, in this new way? What's the point of this new idea, which is going to be more efficient, which is going to be better for us? Utilize multiple sources of evidence. So servant leaders understand the importance of reducing incomplete and inaccurate evidences in management decision making. This is necessary given that a single measure and method rarely measures a construct accurately and comprehensively. How are we measuring, results? Are we just one way? And we cannot afford to be one way. That's really what this is essentially telling us. We must have multiple sources of evidence. So maybe an example where someone has come to report another person. We're all HR people, right? We know there are issues at work, and that's why we have different disciplinary measures. Most times we don't just go, oh, somebody has just done something and then we're just giving query. We have, you must first maybe give verbal warning, then a query, then there must be a disciplinary committee. You must have multiple sources of evidence. This person must have done this once, twice. Once we give verbal warning. The second time, it's a different kind of, disciplinary measure. So before we just take action, before we make a decision, and this just speaks to disciplinary, there are other things. Or rather, I've just spoken to disciplinary. There are so many other things, but we must have multiple sources of evidence. We must just not rely on just one source. So it says the need for multiple accounts to present a fuller and more complete assessment of the measured objects. Servant leaders understand that consistency of high witness accounts does not guarantee accuracy and truth, but consistency is an essential precondition for reliability. Even though consistency does not guarantee that this thing is accurate and true, but we know that it's very important. So we must say, if we go back to this disciplinary measure, the person must have done it more than once. There's been a consistency in that action, and then we can draw inference from it. So this just speaks to how we should reason, to what godly reasoning is. And that's really the end. So in conclusion, we see all over the chapter the different attributes we must imbibe and demonstrate as leaders, whether we are positional leaders or followers. We must recognize that we are leaders even as followers, and followers even as leaders. And as such, we must not lose sight of our responsibilities in whatever capacity we find ourselves. It's important that in whatever capacity we find ourselves within the workplace or any organized relationship, because it's really not just the workplace, we must demonstrate these traits, knowing that in doing so, we demonstrate God. Thank you again for the opportunity to share. And this brings me to the end of this review of chapter 2. Thank you, everyone. I'm still here.
Well done,
Sammy,
well
over to
done,
you.
well done, well done, well done, well done. Oh my goodness. Super work you've done here today. If this is chapter 2, I can imagine how the other chapters look like. Pastor,
Well,
Doctor, Professor, over to you. Don't let me take your stage. I enjoyed this.
Thank you so much. This has been enlightening, revealing. We pray that God will continue to bless you, honor you, and prosper you. Thank you for watching our lives with this. You have really done justice to it. All right. So I think we can just call it a day, and we'll continue to pray offline. Please try and get some rest and have a productive week ahead. Thank you, everyone. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, sir. God bless you. Sheon, thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Take hot water, please.
I will.
Prof, bye.